Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time it is you're watching, and welcome to another character review. It's been a small while. If we didn't take a look at Fremine, we would have been there would have been a really big gap, and thank fuck that Fremine was a 4-star, because, well, I didn't expect them to put the one Seiyu I would hunt for now. Honestly, they even put her on an Archon, and so I'm like, well, awesome. And then and also a few more things that we will touch upon on this review caused me to unfortunately not be able to roll for characters and talk about them. But yes, welcome to the Furina review. I did 2 videos on this channel when the 4.2 beta was reviewing Furina's kit at its very early stages, and actually not a whole lot has changed, but we gotta take a look at what is the final product. Throwing that aside, I want to note that I will be referring to Furina as the Hydro Archon. Lore-wise or not, Furina is sold to the players as the Archon of Fontaine, and I do not wish to spoil anything or start a rabbit hole or fighting and stuff to get this, sorted. Right? Honestly, as long as she's sold to the players as the Archon of Fontaine and she's treated as the face of Fontaine as well, she's gonna be treated as the Hydro Archon, and she's going to be compared to other Archons. I think we are all clear on that. So, let's begin. Furina is a Hydro sword user. Her specialty is her team-wide damage bonus at an indirect effect of constant HP drain. While I will not focus a lot on her attacks, as they aren't a significant part of her kit, it must be mentioned that by using a charged attack, Furina is able to use both of the shitty Pneumosia arcs, and her way of launching a Pneumosia attack is through a normal attack. It is interesting that because of her special charge attack that she has, which is interesting again to see on many sword users, she actually functions more like a catalyst user rather than a sword user, since she is able to chain charge attacks without needing to do a normal attack first. Again, very similar to catalyst users. Again, it's just an interesting effect. But that's the big note for Furina's attacks. Let's move to her skill. Furina has 2 skills, actually. Depending on the arc that she is using, Furina's skill has a vastly different effect. A bit akin to Child's Burst, but even more different than that. So, when Furina is in the Usia arc, she summons 3 familiars. I don't want to say she summons 3 summons, damn you English language. These familiars attack nearby enemies and prioritize the enemy you are attacking. While there's 3 of them, they don't really have AoE damage. Because again, they prioritize the enemy you attack, and they each do have a different attack and attack speed, and I believe one of them, I think the Cram, has a bit of AoE in its attack, but it does attack the slowest. And so it it results in them not really being AoE damage or AoE, just affecting enemies in an AoE. Maybe if they're super close to each other, but not really. The big thing about these guys is that every time they attack, they will consume a percentage of your party's max HP to deal extra damage. Your characters can only go down to 50% HP from this effect, and for each character that does get their HP drained, the damage of the attack is slightly increased. Honestly, if it's all 4 characters, then it is a big one. From 0 to 4, it's good, but each step isn't that much. It's 110, 120, 130, 140%. That's what I mean. It should also be mentioned that these attacks, the damage of these attacks, scale off of Furina's max HP. The duration of these summons is 30 seconds, while the cooldown of the skill is 20 seconds, so yes, they do have more than 100% uptime, which is nice so that Furina doesn't have a problem fitting into long rotation teams like, say, Xeno teams, and she works perfectly fine for quick swap. And I know that sounds amazing, right, for constant Hydro application, right, with the 100% uptime, but unfortunately Furina's Hydro application is mediocre at the best. She's definitely not Xingqiu and Yelan level, but she isn't even Kokomi levels, honestly, considering especially that Kokomi has easy AoE application while Furina does not. Her Hydro application is not good at all, even again with the constant uptime. So yeah, these summons do follow you around, as they will teleport next to your character if you move out of range, but it's still kinda sad to see Furina have this kind of elemental application, when Raiden and Nahida both have really nice AoE application and exceptional application for Nahida's case. Additionally, these motherfuckers don't generate shit for particles. I mean, I don't expect them to be crazy batteries since they do have more than 100% uptime, but they actually just don't do a good job at all. And this is very bad for Furina herself, because Furina is usually off the field, meaning that the already bad generation of particles is made worse because Furina isn't getting the full effect of the particles. Meaning that yes, Furina has considerable energy recharge issues, but save that for later. Now, if Furina is in the Pneuma arc, she summons what I am sure is an Oceanid, but whenever I look at this thing, instead of a closed eye, which I believe it is, I see a creepy smile and I cannot unsee it. Anyway, this summon heals the active character. Yeah, that's it. I wish I was joking, but this thing is completely useless. It doesn't apply Hydro, it doesn't generate any particles, it only heals the active character, while the Ucia summons drain the entire party. And its healing is just bad. Not only are its numbers not that significant, its healing ticks are very slow. You will never use this thing in combat, for sure. And even in the overworld, this thing is so slow, it ticks so slow, it makes healing from food a good idea. I mean, I didn't expect them to give Furina powerful team-wide healing, but at the very least I expected them to make the summon do something else. Why doesn't it work like Yayao's radishes, where even if they heal your characters, they explode, and if you're close to an enemy, they can actually hit them? And that could be the way to generate a particle or two if you hit an enemy. And also, again, apply element. And oh boy, this gets even better. Not only does this thing not move at all compared to the other summons, although its range is pretty big, so it doesn't really matter in Domains in the Abyss, Furina's first Ascension talent is that if your active character gets overhealed, Furina will heal another team member for 4% of their max HP over the course of 4 seconds. But here's the catch! This healing must not come from Furina! Why? Why in the ever-loving fuck would they put this limitation to this talent? Like, it is a completely useless talent. First, it doesn't scale from Furina's HP, right? The Ucia summons, right, do max HP damage, so you will build HP on Furina. But this talent doesn't scale off of Furina's HP, so this talent doesn't heal any significant amount. And then, when it could have been used to help the Pneuma summon a bit, it fucking doesn't because of the limitation. Like, it's okay to not give the base summon team-wide healing, but this talent could have been a nice solution to help it out. So yeah, this summon is completely useless. Never use this. Just bring a good healer with team-wide healing, preferably. And if you think that this maybe and the talent perhaps helps healers that don't do team-wide healing, yeah, no. The healing, as I said, from this talent is not good at all to counteract the HP drain from the Ucia summons. Not in the slightest. And also tied to the skill is Furina's second Ascension talent, which goes as follows. For every 1000 HP that Furina has, capping at 40,000, she increases the damage of the Ucia summons and decreases the healing interval of the Pneuma summon. This talent is completely useless. Why is that? Well, the extra damage for the Ucia summons caps at a measly 28%, which first of all is only 3% more than Golden Troop's 2-piece effect, and also, and most importantly, it is completely overshadowed and made bad by her burst. But as I mentioned at the start, Furina's specialty is her team-wide extra damage that she provides, and she provides a lot of it, more of that when we get to the burst. As such, this extra damage is just useless. Spoilers again, 99% of the time you will use Golden Troop on Furina, which provides a hecton more skill damage than this talent. And to compare it to other Archons, Nahida's second Ascension talent gives her up to 80% extra skill damage and free 24 crit rate on it. And Raiden's second Ascension talent, well, that one doesn't even have a cap, but easily gives you more than 60% extra electro damage and more effects that it has. Just easily, just from base stats alone. And if you thought that the healing interval reduction would save the Pneuma summon, not at all. At best, it's like polishing a turd. The summon is useless, and this does nothing to change that. Even at max, I think it ticks slower than a Bennett ult. Now, if they perhaps had implemented changes like those I mentioned in the first beta review, if you want to go, you want these in detail, you can go watch that. Things would have been bad. Like I mentioned there, like, you know, if the Pneuma summon perhaps worked Like Cookie's skill, that's another good example. And the limitation didn't exist on the first talent, things would be fine. And for Lucia, part of the talent, well, why not make it consistent with itself and change it to attack interval decrease? Huh? This is an indirect damage buff, since more attack speed equals more damage, and in Furina's case, it is, since it's better than stacking damage bonuses. It also means they drain your HP faster, which is good for the burst. We will now soon finally look at it. So yeah, MiHoYo has done the impossible. I'm pretty sure this is a first, and they've made a character whose both Ascension talents are completely useless. And on an Archon at that. Incredible. With all of that out of the way, let's look at the burst. So, Furina does a bit of hydro damage next to her, and now puts an effect into action where whenever a character's HP fluctuates, so both when they take damage and they heal, Furina will gain fanfare points, and she converts these points to extra damage and incoming healing bonus. The conversion is 1% of max HP to 1 point, and the maximum at C0 is 300 points and 400 at C1. These convert to, let's take level 8, talent level 8 as a good spot, 63% at C0 and 84% at C1 for the damage, and 24 and 32 for the healing. And again, that's for everyone. Off-field units do benefit from these. And this is on level 8, and these numbers scale a lot with level. You will want to crown this burst. The duration of the buff is 18 seconds, and the cooldown is 15 seconds. Another more than 100% uptime, although factoring in the animation, it's even less. But also you can't transfer stacks from one burst to another, they always reset. So, it's okay, like again, it's just nice to have. The cost of the burst is 60, but as mentioned, because Furina is off the field, she doesn't receive the full effect of particles, and her skill again doesn't generate particles instantly, so that she can take them in while she casts her burst. Yeah, that's it. Because her burst is very important, this leads to Furina having considerable ER issues, depending a lot on your team. Hydro teammates and 5 users help a lot, but that will not change the fact that you will stack energy recharge on Furina. Furina also, as a first for Archons, has a crit ascension stat, which isn't actually the best since HP would have been a bit nicer to ease up on some substat hunting. That's the base kit. Furina as the Hydro Archon, or as I mentioned, the Face of Fontaine, is an invisible damage buff and nothing else. Wow. Like, she does nothing interesting. She buffs damage. Congratulations. She deals damage. Whoop-de-doo, everybody can do that. So, yeah, in an invisible damage buff, as again the Hydro Archon and Face of Fontaine. Just that, nothing else. Congrats. Wow. As for early constellations, her C1 is really nice. As mentioned, it increases the max fanfare points you can have, and it also gives Furina 150 points when she casts her burst, resulting in an instant damage buff rather than needing to more slowly stack it from beginning. And her C2 makes it so that Furina stacks fanfare 250% better, so 1% max HP is 3.5 points, and for each point above the limit, Furina's HP increases up to 140%. Really, the important thing here is the faster stacks, because the extra HP doesn't really do much. Okay, it increases the summons damage, but it's not really that crazy. Like, her damage doesn't go crazy because of it. As I mentioned, you need to go above the limit to increase her HP, which is kind of not nice, because if it worked as she gained points, it would mean that the Furina has, because if you gain HP in Genshin, your max HP increases, but you don't heal that max HP, right? If you're 100% HP and you gain HP, max HP, you will have HP missing, which would have been nice, because if you heal that HP for Furina, you stack points, right? That would have been nice. But no, you gotta stack you have to stack the points first, and then she gets the HP, which is like, cool, motherfucker. But yeah, like, it's a really good effect, but like, it's not. Yeah, it's a good con to help some non-Fontaine teams, especially, because Nuvilette and Lini right now, they fluctuate their HP a lot, which helps them max Furina even at C0. But this con is not close to Raiden and especially Nahida levels of power or even just interest. What can I say? Like, even with Raiden and Nahida's constellations being mostly a damage buff, They have interesting effects. Raiden's C2 is a Death Shred, which is again just a much more interesting effect than what Furina has, because again she doesn't scale off of the extra HP on buffing others or buffing herself. It only does something for the shitty summons. And then Nahida especially, she has the interesting thing of completely changing Bloom. Well, not completely, but the change she brings to Bloom, Burgeon, and Hyperbloom is extremely interesting. And of course, the death reduction from hitting somebody with Quicken. And it's like, those are interesting. Even at the end, even if at the end they're just extra damage, they are done in a nice indirect way. When with Furina, it is not. What the fuck are you gonna do with the extra HP? Tank! Furina is off the field. She isn't gonna tank. So what's the point? And since the summons drain max HP, the extra max HP doesn't like help with survivability from them. So it's like, woohoo. And you know what? Let's quickly check the other two cons. C4 helps a massive amount for Furina's energy. It's baffling that a unit like her has such a constellation. And her C6 allows her to not be invisible. I guess we'll move to artifacts since they are very easy. Golden Troop and nothing else. Maybe 10 sensitive to Millilith, but you lose quite a lot of damage from Golden Troop, as such it is not worth it. For stats, the main thing is, do you have enough ER, boy? If it means running an ER Sense, that's perfectly fine actually, because again, she doesn't scale with max HP on her usability, just the damage. Doesn't fucking matter if you go with ER Sands. And with all the damage ups from the Burst and Golden Troop, it's actually very viable to run an HP Goblet instead of Hydro damage. It's, again, just very viable if you want the HP. So yeah, main priority is energy recharge in main and substats, followed by crit and HP in an almost equal need there. A Hydro damage Goblet is still very viable, by the way. It depends also on your sands, like if you run an HP sands, most likely you're going to run a Hydro damage Goblet. The good thing of course is that Elemental damage Goblet can have both HP percent and energy recharge, while the HP Goblet can only have energy recharge in it, right? So again, it depends on substats mostly, but they're both viable, that's what I'll tell you. But balancing everything can be tough, and Furina's crit ascension isn't really that helpful, believe it or not. Because again, it would have helped with not hunting a lot of HP from substats if needed, focusing a bit more on crit and focusing on energy recharge. And it doesn't really matter if she crits. She doesn't have a one-time burst like Zhongli or Raiden where you really want that hit to crit. She just has the summon that hit periodically, so it's like, doesn't really matter if they crit or not. So that's why the crit ascension isn't really that helpful. It would have been nicer if it was HP, so that you can focus more on energy recharge in the substats and main stats. So it's like, woohoo, thanks. And that's it. Like, unless you want to do some funky stuff at C6 or even before C6 with Candy's Nuts Fit in Your Mouth, where Maricuse Hunter is the set to go. There's no other set you should farm. Golden Troop. Now on to teams. Actually, before that, you might say, okay, it's nice that I have a nice easy goal to farm, right? Yeah, that's nice, but it also means that there's no variety whatsoever. Fucking Raiden has Hyper Bloom, where you farm the Bloom sets, right? And it's like, that's cool, that's interesting. Zhongli has his weird shit. Vendi has Crit Vendi if he wants, right? There's interesting things to go there. Nahida is kind of the same, but you either use her as a support with Deepwood or more damaging with other artifacts. And it's like, yeah, Golden Troop, be invisible, forced by Golden Troop, right? Be off field, and that's it. There's no other things she does. Oh boy. But yeah, two teams. Well, can this team slot in a very good healer? Then Furina can also be slotted in, except for Bloom teams. Yep. I mean, ask yourself, if an artifact set existed that said gain 100% extra damage to your entire party, but your HP drains, would you not use it everywhere? So yeah, seriously, there isn't a single team that Furina doesn't go in if it can also afford to have a good healer. Like, yeah, don't you just want to double your damage? But it does come with the cost of variable ER needs, so do note that. That's it. It's as simple as that. You might think again that it's cool that she fits in everywhere, But again, the only effect she brings is extra damage. Woohoo! Instead of instead of wasting 2 minutes in the abyss, you'll waste 1 minute and 30 seconds. Oh my god! Crazy. And before we go to weapons, I would like to present to you how fucking disappointed I am at how Furina's kit was designed by comparing her to the other Archons. I talked about this when the first set of changes hit the beta, and like comparing Furina to every other Archon, she's nothing compared to them. The Face of Fontaine has been reduced to an invisible damage buff because Furina does nothing else. And so I want you, with me, to check up on the other Archons and see what they do versus Furina and each other. Right? Let's ask the other Archons and Furina the questions that you would do when you look at a character in Genshin. Alright? Let us begin. Alright, let's begin with Venti, of course. Does Venti deal damage? Yeah. Thanks to the Swirl buff at 1.6, he's very good for Swirl, and even Crit Venti exists and existed. Right, and Faruzan has helped him a lot, so if you want damage, he has damage. Does Venti have energy problems? Not at all. Not only does he have energy recharge as his Ascension stat, his skill generates a good amount of particles instantly, which you can funnel to him. His burst only costs 60. His best in slot weapon, LG for the end, has more ER. And his second Ascension talent refunds energy to him and his team. Does Venti apply his element well? Well, Anemo is a special case, but still Venti swirls a lot, and if he absorbs an element in his burst, it applies the element very well. Does Venti have something useless in his kit? Not at all. His skill is very basic, but it is a big burst of damage depending on the build, but with its good particle generation and low cooldown, doesn't matter. The hold version is definitely not used in combat. It's not significantly different from the skill version, but from the tap skill, but it's pretty nice for it. It's really, really nice for exploring. And does Venti have something unique? Well, he's the king of Anemo CC, and his burst is extremely impactful and unique. Like, it looks unique. So you can feel Venti's presence even if he's off the field, because you see the giant fucking vortex just consuming all enemies. So yeah, he has something unique, and he feels impactful. After that, Zhongli. Does Zhongli deal damage? Yes, while the pillar damage isn't important, Zhongli's meteor is. And thanks to his second Ascension talent, even shield bot Zhongli can deal a very good amount with it. And like, yeah, even if it isn't crazy, fucking hitting 120k with Zhongli's burst hurts, so it's good. Does Zhongli have energy recharge problems? No, his burst isn't as important, sure, as the other Archons, but even then, his burst only costs 40 energy, so it isn't much of a problem. And his pillar, actually, if it hits opponents, does generate constant particles. So no, he doesn't have ER problems, and heck, he can generate a particle or two. Does Zhongli apply his element well? Well, just like Venti, Geo is a unique case, and as such it doesn't matter that much. But Zhongli's burst does apply a lot of Geo for breaking shields, and his pillar pulses also do an okay job if you place it next to an enemy. Also, the CEO of Geo is the best at breaking Geo shields, since the hold version of the skill absorbs the Geo energy of the enemy shields. So it's a unique effect, and it's very powerful. It's very helpful. Does Zhongli have something useless in his kit? No. The pillar can be a problem for a freeze, but most of the time it sits there, and if it hits an enemy, it hits an enemy. You don't lose something if you summon the pillar. And if a miracle happens and miHoYo does something with constructs, then Zhongli most likely is going to be the only one that can do something with them, or be a really good combo with character or whatever effect they bring. And speaking of Zhongli is the only one on uniqueness, he's the only one that can use Petrify and tell most enemies to shut the fuck up. It's pretty useful, when you have consecrated beasts against you, you just tell them to shut the fuck up and you're free to hit them. And stop the craziness, stop the chaos. And of course, dropping a meteor on someone, watching Zhongli just cross his arms like he doesn't give a fuck, it's just a sight to behold. Even the effects of the shield are also a fine way to feel Zhongli's presence. I know that sounds weird, but it's like, wow. And of course, he's the strongest shield in the game. He has many unique things. He has actually really fast attack speed, which many people use for weird builds, but it's something unique. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff. Of course, he's also the only one with the construct resonance, right? The pulses. Unique stuff. Next up, Raiden. Does Raiden deal damage? Do I even need to confirm this? Her skill is some really nice off-field damage, and her burst can tear things to shreds, especially with C2, and Aggravate helped her even more. Does Raiden have ER problems? Of course not. She completely scales with the bloody thing. Her skill generates a fine amount of particles, and she even has the energy restoration for the entire team through her burst. So even if the skill doesn't generate particles instantly, the restoration from the burst helps her. And of course, again, she scales with ER. You stack so much ER on her, it doesn't matter. But she scales with it at the very least. Does Raiden apply her element well? Yes, she's actually one of the few that has really good AoE electro application. 100% uptime with no range limits as well. Cookie also has AoE application, but Cookie's skill is tied to your character, right? When Raiden is not, right? It's not next to your character, and has really good range limits. The no range limits, as I said, you don't notice it, so it can really be helped with somebody like Tighnari. Really good with Tighnari, actually. So yeah, and also there's a good reason why Raiden Hyper Bloom even exists. And even outside of that, she's fantastic for Quicken, Superconduct, and more. Does Raiden have something useless in her kit? Again, of course not. Raiden's kit is well made and nothing goes to waste. And she gets her field time to shine and show her impact with her kit. And she has lots of unique stuff. The energy restoration to the entire team through the burst. I mean, it's kind of similar to Venti, but it's much easier to trigger. She has elemental burst damage bonus, which we'll mention later. She has a lot of cool stuff. AoE Electro, as we mentioned, there's not really any AoE Electro characters that are nice and consistent like Raiden. Like Yae is fine, but it's not AoE like Raiden's. And again, Cookie is just an alternative. So again, Raiden sticks out. And next, Nahida. Does Nahida deal damage? It's just a repeat from Raiden, of course she does. She's the only Dendro character with almost perfect AoE Dendro damage. Wave-based stuff hurts her a bit. But Nahida just deals a lot of damage with her skill. Does Nahida have ER issues? Not at all thanks to her second Ascension talent, helping a bit with crit stats. And she builds mostly like a swirl character, where she can trade between ER weapon, EM sands, or vice versa, and she can mostly hunt ER from substats freely, because it's just the EM and ER that she needs, and maybe a bit of crit. But again, because of the second Ascension talent giving her free crit through Elemental Mastery, everything works. But if that wasn't enough, she's used as a battery for teams because of her particle generation, even if she is off the field, because again of the easy way to build her with ER and EM, like Swirl, and because of the really good particle generation from her skill, no ER problems, unlike somebody else. Does Nahida apply her element well? Gee, guess what's the answer? She's the primo Dendro applier, even for single targets since she has special application amounts, let's say. And just free AoE application. And if that wasn't enough, she's a Catalyst user, meaning that you can use her on field for more application if you wish. Does Nahida have a useless part in her kit? No. While the kit is centered around her skill and her burst doesn't have any effects to help with the grand scenic effect it has when used, there is nothing in Nahida's kit that is not worth using. And as mentioned, do you want to have a more present Nahida? Slap her on field. Play Aggravate. And even then, it's not needed for Aggravate. Like, it's not necessarily that you will play Aggravate, but even then, that Sanctuary is pretty hard to ignore in terms of, oh my goodness, look at that, I'm using Nahida. And now we get to Furina. Let us ask the same questions. Does Furina deal damage? Yeah, her skill does a good amount of damage, although her summons can actually miss their attacks, and I've seen them do that, but most of the time they hit. But they do weird stuff sometimes when they teleport close to you. But yeah, she deals a good amount of damage. Of course, she has a huge damage buff, so I would guess that she should do. But comparing to Nahida and Raiden, she's missing the AoE. Even Venti and Zhongli have more AoE than her. So, you know, she's losing against the other Archons in terms of the AoE, and at least easy way of doing AoE damage. You just have to pray for these summons to hit an AoE. Does Furina have ER issues? Yes! Her skill doesn't generate a good amount of particles, and the other one, you know, one half of it does, the other one doesn't at all. But again, she's off field, so she doesn't get the full power of any particles that are generated. She doesn't scale with ER, right? And her burst costs 60 without any restoration effects. And also, it's a very important burst. Does Furina apply her element well? Not so much. It's barely passable most of the time. Her summons just have their cooldowns and attack intervals, and they just don't apply Hydro that well. Also, as I said, not in an AoE really compared to the other Archons. Does Furina have a useless part in her kit? Yes is the answer again. Her Pneuma summon is awful and not worth using at all, and both of her Ascension talents are useless. And Furina doesn't have something unique to her. Okay, she buffs damage. Woohoo! So many characters, artifacts, weapons do that. As I mentioned before, Raiden has a team-wide burst damage buff. Fucking, even Zhongli with the universal res reduction is technically a team-wide damage buff. Like, just having the team-wide damage buff isn't unique. And as I said, compare them to the other Archons and their effects. What does Furina have? And on feeling Furina's impact, honestly, it's debatable, as I intentionally didn't mention this during the burst. The on-screen effect is more annoying than nice to look at. Thankfully, I think they nerfed it from a beta video that I saw where it legit covered the entire screen. But I genuinely never notice her summon. I don't know, they somehow always end up maybe off-screen, or with all of the other effects from other characters, you will never see them. And I'm like, where the fuck are they? You know, with the burst also covering your screen with that shitty effect, it's blue on blue, because, the summons are blue, your screen is blue, good luck seeing them. But, even at that, she just doesn't have any sort of, impact. At least maybe they could have made characters, have bubbles around them, instead of the shitty screen effect, to show that there's an effect going on. Then, after that, what else are you gonna do? She doesn't have a way to be on field unless you get her C6. And so I ask you now, after all this that I have told you, do you believe that Furina's kit is well made? Throw balance out of your head. Every Archon is busted for one reason or another. But at least they also have some unique effects added on top of that. Right. And this game is extremely easy, where just a damage buff is the most boring effect in the entire game. Tell me, what does Furina have compared to the other Archons? Even other characters, for fuck's sake, because if you tell me she deals damage, whoop-de-doo, every character can deal damage if you build them in a way. Or others that say her Pneuma skill was built for the overworld. Fine, I am sorry to insult you, but you are very stupid to say that. That is such a false statement. They fucked up so majorly when making the Pneuma summon, and you are saying that half of Furina's skill is equally worth to Venti's first Ascension talent and Baizu's passive talent. Think about that. The entire Pneuma side of Furina is honestly less useful than those, Venti especially. I have no idea how fucking stupid someone has to be to create such a character of nothingness. And the way that I described Furina to you when talking about her teams, do you want an artifact that boosts your damage, is in my opinion the most accurate way to describe Furina. Because she's exactly that, an artifact that takes a team slot. Have you heard anybody mention anything about Furina other than her damage buff? Because I haven't, and it's fine if you like that. It's fine if you like that now instead of 10 seconds in the Abyss you completed in 7 seconds. That's all you. But for me, Furina's kit is an absolute disappointment, and very especially for an Archon. Doesn't matter if I pull for her or not, just so you know. It is insane how bad it is. Wow. I'm not asking for her to do everything. Nor if I was in charge of making her kit, I would make her do everything. But again, look at any other Archon. We just compared them, and Furina lacks almost everything they have. What can I say? Again, throw balance out of the window, as I said. The fact that Furina buffs team-wide damage doesn't mean she must do nothing else. Again, Raiden buffs elemental burst damage. I don't see her only doing that because she has that effect. Zhongli has the universal red shred. I don't see him only having that. He has the strongest shield in the game and Petrify. Right. Nahida has insane damage, but she also has insane application. They all have so many busted effects. The only thing Furina has is the shitty damage buff. It's not an interesting effect. And again, balance, there's no reason to balance shit in this game. What the fuck do you mean balance? Again, the damage effect is the most boring effect in this game. Like, okay, she, like for the skill, she doesn't have crazy hydro application. That's fine. At least let the skill generate a good amount of particles, or vice versa. No good particle generation, good application, and an AoE. She does neither. And of course, let's not touch upon the Pneuma summon and the Accession talents. And the other big elephant in the room, the fact that they swapped her C2 and C6 in the beta, and now for Furina to actually do something else, and perhaps open up any gameplay variety as a DPS or a driver, to also even have just some sort of interesting effect, you need to spend $1,000 for the C6, and the current C2's effect is just woohoo more damage, I guess? Not even that, like, okay, woohoo more damage on the summons. It's just a quality of life, which is fine, but like, compare it to the others. It's not an interesting effect. And also the fact that people are fine that MiHoYo is keeping consistency by locking the gameplay variety behind C6s means we are, in an absolute lost cause, that people are supporting such decisions, which made me laugh like crazy when I saw comments mentioned in the last Furina video. People saying, it's fine, every other character has gameplay variety locked behind C6, it means we're keeping consistency. Yeah, that's good. That's good, huh? That's very good that we are allowing such a thing to be the norm. Wake up. Wake the fuck up. So yeah, I needed to mention this and do this comparison because I implore you, tell me in the comments what you think on Furina's skin and its design. Tell me. Find some sort of counter-argument to this garbage that was done. And finally, to finish off with weapons for Furina. Favonius, the Pipe, and Festering Desire. ER with damage on the skill, since Furina doesn't have anything else that needs focus. Her weapon actually isn't that useful, since your main focus is always to have enough ER, and comparing it to especially Festering Desire and even the Pipe, the damage you'll get isn't worth it. So yeah, and like even if you manage the ER, these weapons still are at the top because of their skill buffs. So yeah, other more damage focused weapons like crit stats, they're okay for them, like Jade Cutter being the best for the small bit of HP and the massive crit rate. But yeah, like the Jade Cutter's attack conversion isn't used since Furina's skill skates with HP. But yeah, like nothing else. These three weapons. And I guess her weapon if you want. Then again, like the other weapons with the crit stats are okay, but much worse than the others with the energy recharge and skill buffs. But yeah, there's lots of free-to-play options. If you are an old player and you have Festering Desire at R5, you are very set. But the Pipe is also a very good alternative. It's, again, not worth going for Furina's weapon. And honestly, for the drip, Haran is much better on her. I guess if you have C6 or you want to fuck around with weird can these nuts fit in your mouth builds, then the crit weapons can be good options, especially Haran. And that's it. I am disappointed in the design for Furina. I like the story. I am chained by Norimina Sen. That's why I say it for a lot of patches for cons. But in Norimina Sen or not, Furina's kit is a disgrace for an Archon. And shame on those that made it. I'm sorry. That's the absolute truth. Other weapons are other Archons are busted in many ways, and they have lots of interesting and unique effects, and Furina is sitting with just a shitty damage buff. As the interesting thing. Congratulations. Like this video if you liked it, and sub to the channel to help it out. Follow on Twitch for streams, although Christmas is around, I will be away. And next up for review is, I don't know, because my Primo Bank is completely dry, and there aren't any characters that I'm super interested in that I've seen from leaks. We'll see. So we might take a big break for the series. Maybe a needed one after this catastrophe. Honestly, maybe I'll grab Raiden to try some Hyper Bloom with Kave. I really want to use Kave a bit more. So, might grab Raiden for Hyper Bloom and honestly have another off-field Electro character because I only have Fischl and Beidou and they're chained to Al-Haytham mostly. Or Risley when he comes around. So we might wait for those, maybe an interesting 4-star character if they bring one out. Other than that, I'll see you in another video.